go ahead and get started. Well, welcome. This is our return to in-person learning presentation. Obviously, families who are anticipating returning in January as well are free to listen. I'd first like to introduce myself. My name is Benjamin Cinto. I'm the high school principal. Mr. Fetters, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vice Principal Fetters, as Mr. Cinto just stated.
Mr. Fetters is also the SHUSD Safety Coordinator for our district. I'd also like to introduce Paul and Isidra. They're providing translation services and instructions. They can go ahead and introduce themselves. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Erica Madrigal. She is the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent. She'll be facilitating and recording this session and will also help facilitate the Q&A sessions. We have broken up. Actually, I need to
Mr. Cinto?
Yes,
Mr. Cinto, can I interrupt you for just one moment? Paul, may I ask you to give our Spanish-speaking audience some instructions on how to access the interpretation services this evening?
I will hold. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Let me know when to resume.
Okay. A couple more minutes, Mr. Cinto.
No problem.
So Paul, can you please provide instructions for our Spanish speakers?
Sure, absolutely. Para aquellas personas que desean una traducción en español, en la parte de abajo de la pantalla va a haber un símbolo medio redondo ovalado que dice Spanish o español. Por favor, lo presiona para que usted pueda tener acceso a toda esta presentación solamente en el lenguaje español. Muchas gracias.
Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So let me get that set up. All right. Can everybody see that? Do you just see the do you see the notes, or do you see just the slide?
We see your slide, Principal Cinto, and also the notes.
You also see the notes. So let me try something else. Please bear with me. Sorry. How about now?
Looks great.
Okay. So tonight in the topics covered, we're going to cover the schedule, the health, and procedures is kind of broken up in two parts. We'll hold a Q&A after each of those sections so that you don't have to hold on to all of your questions at the very end. So again, we'll have a section for the schedule, a section for health. We'll have a day in the life Q&A, and then an office procedures Q&A at the very end. And again, before we begin, I want to thank all of you for attending tonight. This has been a very interesting year, to say the least. But I do want to say that we fully recognize that our ability and success to make in-person schooling work is wholly contingent upon our partnership with you as parents and with students. But we're very confident in our ability to make this happen. So I'm going to go ahead, and you'll see that the next slide is a schedule. So one of the reasons why we moved first period to after fourth period was because our schedule was split. Many students either started first period and ended seventh period, or they started second period and ended eighth period. And by moving first period to the close of the day, it enabled us to do temperature checks only at the start of the day. So second period on an A day and fifth period on a B day. So again, everything we did was to try and save time for more instruction. And anytime we would have to take temperatures, that's going to encroach upon instructional time. This also for families was a way for us to have a single drop-off period, so that if you had a student that historically had started first period and then another student that started second period, that there was just one drop-off time. So that was the reason we made that change. It does alternate which students have an earlier release. So obviously if your student doesn't have a first period, they're done at approximately 12 o'clock. Same thing if they don't have an eighth period. Otherwise, they're going to be done at 1 o'clock. You'll also see the A day, B day schedule below the daily schedule. So that's for you to say which day falls on, which day of the week. This was another change because, the idea was to cut down transition times and break times. So the original schedule that was sent out in August, I believe it was, had all classes attending on Wednesday. But by making it just an alternating A day, B day, we reduced the number of transition times. And you don't lose instructional time either because they're in classes for, same amount of time. To those families that have students in a zero period, you should have, zero period PE, I believe, you should have received a schedule from me. We've broken that up by days as well. It's a little different for zero period students, only because that was a very large class and we had to split those two cohorts. But again, that should have been, you should have received that last week. So at this time, this is all that I have for scheduling. Again, we've only planned up until December, till the close of the semester. Beyond that, there could be changes, but we're not absolutely certain yet. So I'd like to open it up to questions about either the schedule from day to day or the AB schedule.
If there are any attendees in the audience that would like to ask a question, if they can hover down towards the bottom of their screen and raise their virtual hand, or if they are a telephone caller, they can press *9 now. Mr. Santos, it does not look like you have any questions.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Fetters.
All right. Well, I just want to start off my presentation by saying thank you to all the families that have filled out your enrollment packets that the district sent in. That information is pretty much vital to making sure that the reopening of schools goes smoothly and that we have all the information that we need. Part of those documents that you filled out were the commitment forms for asking that all our parents pre-screen their children before they come to school for COVID-like symptoms. So the symptoms that would include, and there are quite a few, so I'm going to go through these, I'm going to read through them so that everybody's aware of them, but also there are documentations online that you can refer to. But COVID-19 symptoms would include cough, shortness of breath, fever, and we define a fever as 100.4 degrees, sore throat, headache, chills, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and loss of taste or smell. If it looks like your child does have any of these symptoms, we're asking that you please keep them at home. When appropriate and you feel necessary and we're available, we ask that you test your child for COVID-like symptoms. But regardless, there's a protocol that we need everyone to follow to make sure that we prevent anyone coming on campus that may have COVID-19. So in that enrollment form, you filled out a pledge that said that you would agree to send your student back to school if, or you would not agree, or I should say, you would not send your child to school if they had the symptoms. And if they do have symptoms, you would need to wait at least 10 days have passed since the symptoms first appeared, and your child has been free of fever for at least 24 hours without any fever reducing medication, and other symptoms have improved, for example, cough or soreness of the throat, or shortness of breath.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Cento. Chime in anytime.
I apologize. I was just going to say, a lot of people have asked, like, during that time, students will be able to live stream into their classroom if quarantined for 10 days. I know that was a question a lot of people are asking. They don't need to go on any kind of independent study or anything like that. They would just, during that time they are home, they would log into their classrooms like all other families that are choosing distance learning. They would log into their classes that way.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Cento. If we go to the next slide real quick. This is an example of some of the documentation that we put on our district and school site website that you can refer to. This is just one example of like what we were just discussing. If your child has symptoms of COVID, what to do. If your child tests positive for COVID, what to do. But there's several other resources that are online. And if you look very closely, I'm not going to read it for you in detail, but you can look at the website at www.stunified.org/domain332. And in addition to this Now What chart, you would also find a video made by our students that discusses what to do to make sure that our school is safe. So they're very entertaining and informative as well. So at this time, I would like to open it up for questions.
Do any attendees have any questions regarding this slide? I do not show any questions at this time.
Awesome. And just to reiterate, just like what Mr. Cento said, is that one of the nice things about having a remote learning option is that any student who is, has symptoms and needs to access their curriculum and instruction, they have the power to do so at home. So, and recover as well. So at this time, since there's no question, I'd like to have Ben talk a little bit about a day in the life of a student at St. Helena High School.
Thank you. So really quickly, the day in the life was developed first by just Mr. Fetters and I sitting down and thinking about what a student might encounter. We then had it vetted by a single teacher, and then had it vetted by the entire staff. And then shortly thereafter had our student leadership class kind of vet it to make it better. So we'll cover and I know this was shared at the most recent board meeting, but it has since changed ever so slightly. But we're going to go through each section. Again, if you have questions, we're happy to ask them at the close of this. But student arrival. So the first bell rings at 8:25. We recognize that that's not always going to be, not every student can arrive as close to that as possible. We're just trying to encourage you to do your best to, when you drop off your student, one, obviously they have to have a mask with them, but not 7:30 or 7:25 or whatever. Just try and make it as close to that time as possible. Obviously, if you're within walking or biking distance, that's more practicable. But we know that's not always possible. So just encourage your student. Again, there's markers and signs everywhere around campus about distancing, about face coverings, about hand washing, and coughing into your arm, those kind of things. So just, again, encouraging students that, you know, I think there's going to be about 380 students on campus. And again, their participation and their compliance with these safety protocols is that's what's going to make us successful. Classrooms will be locked before the bell, so they will not be able to enter classrooms. I'm going to move on to the next one. Entering class. So Mr. Fetters and I have gone around campus, and each class has a tape line on the ground that is marked with the teacher's name and the teacher's classroom. So students will know where to line up before every single class. It'll take a little time getting used to, but there'll be markers that spreads them out as much as possible. So students will line up every single period, not just at the first period of the day. Upon the bell ringing, the teacher will prop open the door, and they will come out to conduct a temperature check, as Mr. Fetters already discussed. If a student is tardy, or if they have a free period, they will do their temperature check at the office. Students will then file into the classroom and sit in their assigned seat. So for contact tracing purposes, every student will be assigned seating. There will be no open seating. Last student closes door. Students report directly to the seat. On day one, all students will receive a personal portable barrier, my apologies, in second period, the first class of the day. Outside of bathroom usage, there's no in and out privileges unless they're leaving for an off grounds, which we'll cover at the tail end of the presentation. They won't be sharing materials, and they're seated at all times unless directed by the teacher. I will say that we'll be sending out a video later this week that demonstrates all of these practices, all of the day in the life procedures to students. So that'll be coming out as well. Bathrooms during class. Again, for contact tracing purposes, we're locking the bathrooms during passing period. Only one student at a time is allowed to leave the class. I have a map at the end of the day in the life that I'll also share with you. If a bathroom is full, meaning it's every stall or urinal is full, then there'll be markers outside of the bathroom to wait. And then upon returning to classroom, all students would use hand sanitizer once returning from the bathroom. Go ahead, Mr. Fetters.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cento. So in leaving class, as Mr. Cento already indicated, that students will be bringing, there are going to be two requirements that all students must have. They must have a mask, and they must have the portable barrier that we're going to supply to them on day one. So leaving class, they're going to fold their personal portable barrier for transport. The teacher is going to dismiss the students at the bell, starting with students closest to the door. Teachers will clean, once the students leave, teachers will clean between classes. And then can you go to the next slide, Mr. Cento, to talk about passing period? Passing period, restrooms, as Mr. Cento already indicated, restrooms are going to be closed and locked during passing period. Again, students will stand on, they will report to their line right in front of their classrooms, and they will stay socially distant as possible. And once again, anytime the students on campus, they're going to be wearing a mask. Break, thank you. At break that Mr. Cento already discussed, he's going to be showing at the end of this segment of the presentation a map of where all our breaks are located. Students are going to take their break at their assigned areas according to third and sixth period classes. And once you see the map, it's a little confusing at first, but you'll understand it after that. Classrooms closed and locked during break. Once again, during break, for contact tracing purposes, we're keeping the bathrooms closed. Students will use the bathrooms in class. Students to pack snacks, and free snacks will be available in break areas, all grab and go. So that's one thing that we're going to recommend to all parents is that, you know, the students, they're going to be here from pretty much 8:30 to 1 o'clock. So they will need a snack at break, and at break is the only time that they're allowed to remove their mask so that they can eat and drink. Parents can drop off food at an unsupervised table near the bike rack in the quad. So for most of our students, they know where that is located. So parents will have the ability to bring their students lunch, but it will be kind of at their own risk.
All right. So after school, lunch is grab and go, and that will be provided on the south side of Vintage Hall near our cafeteria. And again, it will be available at all times that students are dismissed. So, you know, because half of our student population doesn't have a first period and the other half doesn't have an eighth period, we wanted to make sure that they had access to grab and go lunch at all points in the day. Again, you can drop off lunch or bags for students at the table near the bike rack. And after school, students are not allowed to loiter on campus and must leave upon the close of their day unless participating in athletics. Busing. So busing is available. Bus riders with no first or eighth period. We will have basically a staging area at the bottom of Vintage Hall where students can wait until the bus arrives, after which time they will line up in the breezeway, which is on the, you know, in front of Vintage Hall on the north side of the building. There will be markers there for students to line up to get on the bus. So this is our map. So what Mr. Fetters and I did is we tallied up how many students were in each third and sixth period, because that's when break is after those classes. And we tried to have an equitable number of students in each designated area. So on day one, teachers will actually walk students, actually day 1 and 2. Teachers will walk students to their break area. Also on this map, you'll see the red squares. Those are hand washing stations. And then you see a gray circle with a red circle inside of it. Those are snack tables during lunch. So those are so the snack table over by the 300 wing, areas 3, 4, and 5 can access that one. The one by building H, I don't know if you can see my cursor. There you go. Building H will be accessed by 1 and 2. The snack table for here is for group 6, and then the one over here is for 7, 8, 9. We also have dedicated restrooms, and that will be communicated to students by the teachers. So these are restrooms over by the field house, the 100 wing in Vintage Hall, that will be used by every classroom that does not have its own dedicated restroom. So we have a number of classrooms on our campus that have their own restroom. Those will all be in use. However, the dedicated restrooms that you see, 1, 2, and 3, those are the restrooms that will be cleaned 3 times a day. So I believe it's 9 o'clock. Oh gosh, you know what, I'm not going to say because I'll probably mess up the times, but they'll be cleaned 3 times a day because those are going to have the most frequent use. You also see the grab and go lunch here on the south side of Vintage Hall. I guess I should have also put the busing in here as well, but it's a pretty busy map already. Again, students will be walked here. They'll know, they'll get accustomed to it. It'll be clear where the snacks are on the table. So at this time, I'd like to open up questions about a day in the life for students. One more thing I would like to add before I take any questions is we have gone ahead and purchased umbrellas, Saints umbrellas, red umbrellas with white lettering on it for every single student to have on campus once and if the rain ever comes, which we're really hoping for. So every student will be given an umbrella as well. Questions?
Mr. Cinto, it looks like we do have some questions in the audience. So Mr. Dappin, I'm going to allow you to talk. Please unmute your mic.
Hey, so my question is regarding TAs in class during this odd schedule. Will we be having normal class? What's the plan surrounding that?
So your question about if you're a teacher's aide, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if you're a teacher's aide or something similar to that.
Yeah, you would still follow your schedule as is. That doesn't change.
Wendy, you may unmute your mic to ask your question.
Hello, my question is, if a student has a free period, is there an expectation that they will report to a certain area for that free period? Or is the expectation that they will be leaving campus?
Good question. I forgot to include that. So we will have an area on campus that they are able to go to if they do not want to leave campus. Again, most of the students that have a free period are upperclassmen. But yeah, I mean, they are allowed to leave campus. Again, the only time that we would need to take their temperature is if they have a second period that's free or a fifth period that's free. So we're going to be communicating with those students about taking their temperature at the office, but both things are available. They'll be utilizing the same space that the busing students are using at the bottom floor of Vintage Hall if they want, or they may leave campus as well.
Okay, thank you. And I have one additional question. That is, for your freshman students, and this is sort of separate but connected, will there be an orientation period for the first day or two? What are you expecting of the freshmen who have never been to campus and are not sure about how to get around?
Great question, and I'm actually glad I have an answer for that one.
Okay, good.
One, Mrs. Brazil, our student leadership teacher and activities director, she's working on a specific video for freshmen. And again, our orientation that we did earlier, oh gosh, in late August, that is still available on the school's website, and that's a good piece of information. But to your point about campus navigation, that's what Mrs. Brazil is really going to hit on. She's working with students on making sure that kids feel comfortable knowing what classes where. So more to come on that one. But yeah, we've recognized that a number of students have never been set foot on this campus before. Everyone will be out and about doing the best they can to help on day one and day two. But we've tried to make it pretty organized. Again, even just looking at the map that we have up right now should give students a general feel of where things are. Again, from the numbering. So if you can see my cursor, which I hope you can, the 100 wing here, the 200 wing there, the 300 wing over here, and then all the other buildings. Still, that's not very detailed, but it's at least a starting point. But more to come on the video for freshmen from student leadership.
And I could just chime in too, that first day of school in particular is going to be new for pretty much everybody. So it's going to be kind of an orientation for all students. And so periods 2 through 1, as we have it on the schedule now, it's going to be pretty scripted about what the teachers are going to do. And there's going to be a lot of guided practice. So like Mr. Cinto alluded to, everybody's going to be out, everybody's going to be helping students, teachers, staff members, Mr. Cinto and myself, so we're going to make it as streamlined as possible and make sure that, our freshmen in particular are supported.
Wonderful. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
We do have
Any
another
other
question. Yes. Julio, you may unmute your mic to ask your question.
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿Sí me escucha?
Sí.
Sí, sí la escucho. ¿Usted me escucha? Sí, tengo una pregunta. Por ejemplo, cuando salgan de vacaciones y regresen los niños, es ¿Les van a hacer algunas pruebas o cómo va a funcionar eso?
Did you understand the question, Mr. Cinto?
No.
Okay, let me go ahead and have the translator. Isidra, can you please translate that question? I'm going to pull you out of real quick. Go ahead. You can go ahead and speak right now.
What was it?
So if you could repeat that one more time, Isidra.
Was it about testing after vacation? Okay. We're not conducting any student testing here at the school. Our staff have to be tested all staff has to be tested within a 2-month period. So the district has worked really hard on coming up with a schedule for staff testing, but we do not facilitate any student testing.
Attendees, are there any additional questions? If so, please raise your virtual hand, or if you are a telephone caller, please press star 9. Mr. Cinto, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions.
All righty.
Well, I guess that falls to me, Mr. Cinto. So I'm going to kick off our office protocols. What we've been really trying hard to do is to streamline our office procedures during the reopening process and also during this time of in-person learning and distance learning simultaneously. So what we're trying to do is limit, the amount of time, energy, paper, and all that goes into, just daily school processes. So if you could go to the next slide, Mr. Cinto. So first I'd like to talk about visitors, or when parents come to school to check in. So we're just asking that, just like what we're asking of the students, we ask this of anybody who comes on campus, is that they wear a mask. We will not have anybody in the main office unless you scheduled an appointment with an administrator or counselor, and that there's a reason for you to be in the main office. Pretty much everything is going to be handled outside of the main office. But if you do have an appointment, one of us, a counselor or teacher or administrator or whoever scheduled the appointment, will come out and collect you and take you to the correct location. Doorbells. I think this was a brilliant idea. We kind of all came up with it at the same time because we couldn't see people coming around the back of the quad to our windows. I think it was a great idea at first, but Mr. Cinto and I got our hands on them and we started to, test them. So I don't know if our office staff is really appreciating it right now, but as we go into reopening, it will help us so that we can know who's outside and who needs help. So the doorbells will be located in the front of the school as it faces Grayson, and it'll also be in the back of the school in the quad entrance to the main office. And we have 2 windows there. One is Charlene's window, and the other one is the main office window that you would use for attendance, and also to use and get your pass. This is where you will sign in, sign out, and sign needed documents, collect documents, drop off materials, and make payments for purchasing at the windows that are located in the quad. Okay, so the next slide is talking about our off-grounds pass and absences. So just kind of have to bear with me. There's a lot of information, but don't worry, we're going to make sure that you guys have a reference sheet that you can look to at all times to make sure that you know how to give your student off-grounds pass and how to report absences. So for pre-planned appointments, we would request that you contact the office by 8 a.m. on the day of the appointment via text or email, or you can fax it, and we have those numbers and the email address that you can contact. Messages must include all 4 or 5 if using a fax. Parent, guardian, full name, notifying office of early departure. Student full name, date and time of early departure, and reason for departure. For faxes, include parent and guardian signature, because we can verify that it's you through the text, but if you're doing a fax, we have to make sure that it's you, so we would need you to sign that. Students, they will pick up an off-grounds pass that we will post on the office window facing the bicycle rack. So all they need to do is just come and grab it. Students will present off-grounds pass to teacher at the beginning of a class to notify the teacher of early release. So they've picked up their pass, they've gone to class, they show the teacher that they're going to be leaving. And when released from class, students will leave campus as arranged by parent or guardian. So we just want to make sure that, there's no real transfer of paper, because we don't really need it. So there are other ways to verify. For absences, and this is very important because we need to make sure that we know if your child isn't coming to school or not accessing distance learning, that we need to know the reason why. This helps us with trying to identify, support, and also making sure that the student gets what they need to be successful. For an absence, you're just going to do it like regular. You're going to contact the office each day the student is absent via text, once again, email, or you can call. And so we can make sure that the message should include your full name, notifying the office of absence, the student's full name, the date of absence, and the reason for absence, because we have to document what if the absence is excused or not. Upon return to campus, students report directly to class, no absence slips required. Teachers will be notified through other means, but the student, all they need to do is, if they're just coming to class or school, they need to stop by the main office and have their temperature checked. But if they went and came back, or left and came back, then they go right to class.
And again, all of this information will be provided. We have, our Charlene Rabidal in terms of making payments and things with athletics. We're trying to send more rather than frequently. So once this, and it'll look like this. What do parents need to know and what do students need to know? But we're trying to expand upon this. So I have the next one that talks about counseling services. So just so you know, if you need to make an appointment with your child's counselor, and there's a breakdown, please email them. We're also, and again, very important at this time, continue to provide mental health services to students, more so than ever. So those appointments are still available. But obviously, as we return to in-person, the goal is not to interrupt class time. So we are not pulling students from class. Ms. Linder and Mr. Garrity have been working really hard to kind of push virtually into classes, and I'm sure they'll push into classes as well in second semester, but they're going to be doing in-person appointments before school, during break, after school, or during a free period, and virtual appointments as well. Again, we'll be communicating with students about mental health therapists and in securing those services as well. But we're trying to protect the class time and your time as much as possible, knowing that kids have been away since March 14th. So at this time, that is the close of the office procedures. If there's any questions about, I'd like to take any questions about office procedures first, and then any random questions that we might be able to address after that.
Mr. Senta, it looks like we have a few questions. So the caller with the last four digits, 4231, please unmute your phone so you may ask your question.
Hi there, it's Diane Marr calling, and I didn't have a question about office procedures, but my question didn't get in until the tail end of the previous section. So it relates to something you said in the previous section, which was students will be expected to leave campus unless they're participating in athletics. Are we expecting athletics in November, December?
I know they're starting to practice during that time, so yes.
Okay. Great. We will follow up with coaches then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jean Marie, please unmute your mic to ask your question.
Hi, my question was, if we've chosen for our student to be home through December, will there be a similar process? Will we go through this all again in December on what protocol will be coming back in January?
Great question, Jean Marie. Again, we've booked everything out for the remainder of this semester. Again, as you've all been witness to, these changing conditions on the daily. So I know that's something we'll be discussing. We've already started discussing that, but we want to see how it goes now, and two, the changing context. I mean, even now there's some new guidance on the reopening of schools and new considerations and new allowances. So, and that was just today. So I imagine we will go through some kind of process, but I don't anticipate it being as new at that time or that dissimilar at that time. But that's just a guess. But we'll be informed by the context of that time, as well as the context of how well we do during the next 6 weeks. So again, I know that's not a very definitive answer, but we're gonna have to do something.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Do any other attendees have any questions? If so, could you please raise your virtual hand, or if you're a phone-in caller, please press *9. Mr. Cinto, there does not appear to be any more questions. Oh, I have one more question.
No problem.
Sally, please unmute your mic.
Hi, this is Sally Guzman. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sally.
Hi. I had a question about what Mr. Fetters was talking about. If your child starts having symptoms that could be the COVID, and so they stay home, and then maybe somehow you take them to be tested or something, and you find out they do have it, what is going to be the protocol there? Like, they were at school or something, and some of the other kids may have gotten exposed to them. Thanks.
You want me to field this one, Mr. Cinto? We'll chime in. We at each school we've had our protocols put into place. We've really put a lot of time and energy here, especially our school nurse, Barbara Dondero. So we have a protocol in place, and that's one of the things that was pointed out in that chart that we semi kind of reviewed. But it tells you pretty much what would happen if your child, if you think that your child has COVID, and then what the steps to take. But we have what is called contact tracers at each one of our school sites that work with the county health officials, and so we would try as confidentially as possible supply the contact tracers with all the information, but the health officer would make the ultimate call about the next steps that we would have to take at the school, which could possibly be, and I just want to be transparent, could possibly be that we would have to quarantine some students. We may have to quarantine some teachers as well, or staff members that came into contact. It would just all kind of determine, what they go off of is a term called close contact. If you have close contact for a certain period of time, which now, just like Mr. Cinto was talking about, all these procedures and guidelines are changing. So, but the close contact is the key on that. So about our next steps, but there is a protocol in place for sure.
Okay, thanks. I was driving home, and so I missed the first few minutes, and I can't see I'll review all those sheets and stuff when I get home. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. There's several documents on our school website and the district website that can help you. But that chart that we shared with you is a pretty good explanation about what steps you would take, step by step, depending if you were exposed or if your child does test COVID positive, about what to do in the next steps.
Okay,
And this session is being recorded as well.
okay. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate your time and all your hard work.
Oh,
Thanks,
That's
Sally.
hard.
Thanks,
Okay,
Sally.
thanks a lot.
Any other questions?
It does not look like we have any more questions, Mr. Cinto.
All right.
All right.
Well, again, we thank you from every single faculty member here at St. Helena High School. We thank you for your patience. We thank you for bearing with us in these really challenging times. Again, it's something I share your experience. This has been the most difficult semester of my 23-year career, and but I wouldn't want to be with anybody else. So again, I thank you for your presence. I thank you for your positive outreach and for helping make everything we do better with your input. On that note, on behalf of St. Helena High School,